Every December, 574 million people voluntarily share their personal data on social media, and they love doing it. That is Spotify Wrapped. It is one of the best examples of data analytics in action. 574 million people having their listening history cleaned, analyzed, and turned into something so personal that millions of people share it every single year. I know I'm one of them with my group of friends. Today, we are going to explore what data analytics looks like in the age of AI. Who does the work, how AI is changing every step, and why these careers are growing faster than ever. We are going to cover the four roles that power data analytics and exactly how AI is reshaping all of it. This video is designed for anyone curious about the field, but if you are already working in data, stick around. Seeing how AI is changing each role might shift how you think about your own. And I know I already covered this in one of my previous videos where I covered specifically data analyst, business intelligence analyst, as well as data engineering roles and how AI is changing them. So check that out above in the card I linked. Data analytics at its simplest is about turning raw information into decisions. Every time a company decides where to open a store, what to stock the shelves, or which customers might be about to leave, someone analyzed data to get there. And this isn't some niche skill. This is happening everywhere at massive scale. And increasingly, AI is accelerating every part of this process. Let me show you three companies that you already know, as you can see on the screen here. First, Spotify. Every December, Spotify takes your listening data and turns it into Wrapped, as you can see in this article here. That personalized recap you see all over social media, where over 550 million users actually share this and get this. Millions of them share it voluntarily. And you can see here that they have the architecture for reading the data, processing data, and then ultimately creating it into an analysis that is turned into a viral marketing moment for everyone to share, like myself. Secondly, Starbucks, as you can see here, they have a platform called Analyst that analyzes demographics, foot traffic, and competitor locations to decide where to open every single new store. That is data analysis driving real estate decisions and why Starbucks is typically very thoughtfully and well placed for its businesses. Thirdly, here is Netflix. 80% of what people watch on Netflix comes from personalized recommendations. Their recommendation engine is worth an estimated $1 billion per year in subscriber retention alone. And that comes from the data analysis that they perform on their subscribers to ultimately determine what to recommend them based upon their previous history of what they have watched. And ultimately, data and data analytics is an $82 to $91 billion industry today. And it is growing 21 to 33% every single year. Every single company I know and that I've worked at wants to be data driven with their decision making. Now, here is something important. You do not need to be a math genius to work in data. I know I do not identify as a math genius. The World Economics Forum actually ranked analytical thinking, not calculus statistics, as the number one skill employers are working for. And you can see number 11 is AI in big data. That means the ability to look at a problem, break it down, and figure out what the data is telling you is more valuable than understanding the statistics themselves, too. I know for me, whenever I have to do statistical research or do some of that more involved math, I am now having AI help me complete that and help me understand the best way to analyze data. And so it is something that, yes, having a background in statistics is helpful when working with data, but it's not absolutely necessary with the tools that you have at your disposal today. And in fact, when I look at the World Economics 2025 Future of Jobs Reports rankings and see the top 10 before we get to AI and big data, these top 10 all contribute to your ability to work with data and AI. Oftentimes, it takes a lot of resilience, leadership, creative thinking, motivation, and empathy, believe it or not, to work with data and analyze it. Because oftentimes you're trying to understand how you can overcome difficult problems or utilize data to get to the right decision to solve important problems. And so that takes often putting yourself into another person's shoes and truly understanding the business and thinking creatively in a way that you can manipulate the data and understand it and ultimately utilize AI to help drive you towards the right answer so that you can solve the problems that are in front of you. So now we've covered what data analytics is and some of the skills that can help with it. But who actually does the work? It turns out it is not just one job. I've outlined 4 distinct roles, and you can argue that there are more roles other than the ones I'm bringing up. And each of these 4 roles are bringing a completely different perspective. And AI is changing how every one of them works and interacts with data and does their job on a day-to-day basis. To make this concrete, let's use one example. Say a coffee chain wants to figure out which city to open their next store in, and they have all 4 of these roles filled by individuals. There's one question, but 4 different people can help answer it in different ways. For example, with the data engineer, to get the data flowing, the data engineer is the person who builds the infrastructure. They create the pipelines that collect data from different sources and move it all into one place. For our coffee chain, this is the person who connects the point of sale system where the actual transactions are occurring, the foot traffic sensors, or the data around the geographic areas, and the real estate data into a single database where everyone else can access it. Their toolkit might include things like Python, SQL, dbt, Spark, other cloud platforms like AWS or Google Cloud, and more tools. And with AI coding agents, engineers can now generate pipeline code from plain English, making them faster than ever at building these systems. Progressing to the data analysts, they're finding the answer. So the data analyst is the actual person who digs into the data and finds the answer for where to place a store. They explore the data, spot patterns, and present their findings to the people who are ultimately making the decisions. For our coffee chain, this is the person who looks at which cities have the highest foot traffic, the most favorable rent, and the best market potential, and then presents a recommendation to their leadership. Their toolkit includes SQL, which stands for Structured Query Language. I forgot to mention that in the previous data engineer. Excel, Tableau, Power BI, which are data visualization tools. AI tools like Claude can now run some of this analysis in seconds from a plain English prompt, which is exactly what we're going to demo later as a part of this video. And so many data analysts now with AI are figuring what are the right questions to ask and how can I provide AI the data to analyze my data to get to the answers that I need to solve this business problem. For the analytics engineer, the third box here, this is a newer role, I would say the newest of these 4 roles that are presented here, that bridges the gap between the engineer and the analyst. And personally speaking, this is probably the area where I've played the most throughout my career. They build clean, tested data models or tables so that the analysis of the data can run again next quarter or next month without anyone starting from scratch. For our coffee chain, this is the person who creates a reusable scoring model that can evaluate any potential city automatically or creates some sort of standard data model where they're getting all of the factors in for all of the potential markets that they can utilize in order to make this decision in other places. Their toolkit includes dbt, which stands for Data Build Tool, which is essentially a tool that I've demoed in a previous video that I will link above in the card that shows how you can build lineage, essentially tracking your data from where it enters your database to where it ends and do all the transformations in between. SQL and data warehouses like Snowflake or BigQuery, basically places where all your data lives. AI can now generate DBT models, generate SQL, and test from descriptions, accelerating the build once run forever approach, allowing analytics engineers to build out these repeatable frameworks a lot quicker than previous iterations. Now, for our last role on this page, BI developer of making the data visible, the BI developer, which stands for business intelligence, builds the dashboard and reporting systems that let non-technical people, so the people who aren't deep into data working with it, see the data and make the decisions on their own. For our coffee chain, this is the person who creates a dashboard where the executives can compare cities side by side and filter by whatever criteria matter to them and the business. Their toolkit includes data visualization tools like Power BI, Tableau, and again, SQL. There's a lot of common tools utilized across many of these roles. AI-powered BI tools are starting to generate dashboards and visualizations from natural language from this data. And so it makes it even faster to go from question to insight. And a really big emerging trend within business intelligence in particular is the ability for people in the business to talk to their data. And by that, I mean you create a data set that you know is correct, and you give it to the end business users. So say your CEOs, your operations people that are focused on running the business and not in the data. And they're able to ask questions to that to understand exactly how their business is running just in plain language, utilizing that with AI. And this is enabled by semantic layers, which is another video I will link above as well. Now, with this example, there are 4 distinct roles, but as you can see, there's a lot of overlap between them. And oftentimes in smaller companies, you'll see maybe one person wear all 4 of these hats. I know for me, in my career of working in data almost 10 years, especially in the startup roles I've had to wear every single one of these hats to ultimately fulfill the need for the business when it comes to data. As far as the salary for these roles, they can range from the mid 80s for analysts up to 130 to 150K and even beyond 200K for engineers or for the director level positions of these. But salary varies a lot by source, by location, by experience level, and I think ultimately it depends upon the company and the industry as well. I will link current salary release sources below in the description so you can check the latest numbers if you're interested, but I'd say around those ranges is what I've seen throughout my career. Now, moving beyond the salary, in practice, you'll see that these roles overlap a lot, especially at smaller companies, like I said, where one person can wear multiple of these hats. The important thing here is not necessarily the individual job titles, but understanding the different types of work that goes into it. Data analysis and data analytics is really a team sport where you have different needs at different times. And really having that same question with all these different perspectives and skill sets really is what makes a good data team work. Now you know what data analysis is and who does it, but here is where it gets really interesting. AI just changed the whole game, as I've been alluding to throughout this video, and I want to show you exactly what that looks like. Before AI, if you wanted to answer our coffee chain question, you would spend hours writing SQL queries by hand, or essentially the structured query language, the syntax that's used to ask questions of your database. And you would also spend a lot of time cleaning messy data, meaning you have data that's not configured or showing the information in the right way. And so you have to account for those nuances, and manually scanning spreadsheets for patterns and assembling charts one at a time. A solid analysis could take days or even weeks. After AI, you describe what you want in plain English, and the AI writes the SQL for you, cleans the data, spots the patterns, and even drafts the visualizations. The same analysis that used to take days now can take minutes or hours. And this is not theoretical. According to McKinsey's 2025 State of AI report, which McKinsey is a consulting firm and research firm, 88% of organizations now use AI. 72% use generative AI specifically, which is up from just 33% 1 year earlier. Gartner, another technology research firm, predicts that 40% of enterprise applications will feature AI agents by the end of 2026, up from less than 5% today. And according to LinkedIn data, AI has already created 1.3 million new roles globally. This shift is happening incredibly fast, and it's affecting not just the data industry, but all industries and all job titles. Now, let me show you what this actually looks like. I'm going to take our coffee chain scenario and do the analysis right now using Claude Code and Claude AI on the website, which is completely free. Claude Code is not free, which I'm starting up here right now. And I'm going to copy and paste this prompt where I have our coffee chain data saved here within my folder structure. And I'm telling Claude, hey, pretend we are opening a new coffee shop as we work for a coffee shop company. Based on this data, which city should we open our next coffee shop in and why? Explain it to me utilizing the data and generate a data visualization with the single strongest reason for the city we choose. I'm going to send off this prompt, and I'm asking it also to place the analysis inside this folder. So we'll let this run for a second. And just to show the example, that was with Claude Code, which has access to my computer. I can also access Claude through the website here, upload my coffee chain data that I have here, and ask virtually the same prompt. Say, hey, pretend we're opening a new coffee shop, and then essentially go through that same process for creating the data visualization and explaining to me why we should open a new coffee shop where we need to. So I'm going to take a pause here and we'll come back once both of these actually have some output to generate. And I'll need to go back here and approve essentially all of these edits that Claude Code is making on my computer before we get to a final analysis state. Coming back here to Claude Code, it has delivered us our results in the terminal, which is essentially the interface where a lot of code work happens, but now it's very easy to interact with Claude Code, given that we just type in plain English. What it did is it analyzed the data that we have here in the top portion of our screen with the city and state and all of these different factors for monthly revenue, monthly foot traffic, average rent per square foot, population, competitors within 3 miles, and analyze that data with Python in different ways. And ultimately arrived at the recommendation for opening in Boise, Idaho, because it has the best revenue per competitor and seems to have the lowest rent, highest foot traffic, even if your monthly revenue might be a little less than other cities. And so that is the reasoning here. And we can see that it also generated the visual where it shows that Boise, Idaho has the least competition for the most revenue and added in an annotation in this. So it does an excellent job of doing this data analysis. However, there's still human discernment needed here. And ultimately, we need to think about, for us as a business, what are the key decisions that we want to make this, or key criteria that we want to make this key decision on. And within the Claude internet interface here, Claude.ai, you can see that it actually asked me that question, where sometimes you may need to instruct AI if you're analyzing that data, hey, optimize for this. And that way you're getting the answer to the question that you want. So here we'll answer it a little bit differently and say we want a very profitable location and say, yes, numbers are what matters. So even if we're in a smaller city. And ultimately, it's going to go through this same analysis, and we'll see whether or not it comes out with Boise. And you can see here, as it's generating in real time, that it actually generated Nashville. So this is where the human element comes in. While the responses only took a few seconds or minutes, a manual version of this analysis would take a lot longer, but the value that the human adds is the discernment and the criteria for answering the question. Now, if you want to do a complete data analysis from start to finish with AI for free without spending any money, I actually have a whole video on how to do that with an AI coding tool that is free called OpenCode. And generally, for data analysis and data analytics purposes, prefer having these AI coding tools like Claude Code or OpenCode as opposed to going into the browser. While it does have its place, it's nicer to have your work actually written out into folders on your computer. That way you can more thoroughly quality check it. So here's the thing that matters the most, and it's the reason I wanted to make this video. AI is incredible at the mechanical parts, cleaning data, writing queries, finding patterns in millions of rows. And you can see here with this data set, we're working with a lot less than 1,000,000 rows, specifically 8 rows of data. But AI cannot tell you which question to ask in the first place, even with 8 rows of data. You saw in our 2 sessions that we got 2 different answers. You as the person conducting data analytics, bring the larger business context to the data to help make the best decision for your business by asking the right questions. And that is really the job. It's not the math, it's not the code, it is the judgment. And if you're wondering whether AI is going to replace these jobs, which I have wondered that myself after being in the field for 10 years, to be candid, you may find some evidence that is actually the opposite. Even though you could find evidence that, yes, they are replacing the jobs, there is some optimism here. The Bureau of Labor Statistics specifically projects around 34% growth in data science roles through 2034. Which makes it the 4th fastest growing occupation in the entire country, with about 23,400 new openings every single year. And I know I didn't mention data science earlier within these 4 roles, but it's a very similar profession that maybe is a slightly bit more statistics focus with building out models for data and doing more predictive analytics. But a lot of the information and skills that you're going to find in all of these different data roles for data engineers, analysts, analytics engineers, and BI developers, you will also find with data scientists. Now, the logical question here is, all right, you just showed us that AI is able to do things in minutes and hours that you said used to take days or even weeks. Why would that not replace those data analysis jobs? Well, I'd say they're growing and there's potential for them to continue to grow into the future, like the BLS states here, because AI makes data professionals more productive and it does not replace them. And let me say this, throughout my entire career, I have had much more work to do than I've been able to get done. And like you saw with those 2 different sessions of Claude, the value that the data analytics professional brings is their judgment and ability to discern how to ask their data the right questions to ultimately arrive at the best decision for their business. Data analytics in the age of AI is about the same thing it's always been: turning information into decisions and turning data into action. I've presented to you 4 types of professionals that do this work, each bringing a slightly different perspective. The difference now is that AI handles the mechanics while humans provide the judgment that matters most. Asking the right question and communicating the answer, that is still the job around data analytics. If you're curious how I made these infographics as well, I conducted research using Google's Notebook LM to synthesize articles and sources from across the web. And if you want to try this yourself for free, check out my video on getting started with AI for data analysis for free. Like I mentioned earlier, will link it below in the description. And if this helped you understand what data analysis actually is, data analytics is, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. All of my content is typically around AI and data. As always, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.